Hope Today. I'm Tangelia. This evening, our thought will be on the topic perceptions or truth. Perceptions or truth. There have been times when I have struggled with my perception of who God is to me. I can actually see it sometimes in my prayer life. When sometimes I don't believe that he will truly answer some of my prayers. I know I'm not the only one out there. I know I'm not the only one that struggles with this sometimes. Why? Because we all are human. Sometimes we feel that our prayers are just too large, or maybe we should not visualize greatness sometimes in the things that we desire for our lives or even for others. It comes from our perception of who we see that God truly is. I struggle with this, and I wonder why. Growing up in a Christian home all of my life, went to Christian private schools all of my life into college, I wonder why have I still struggled over my lifetime in understanding or having a limited perception of who God is. Think about that. How is your perception of God? It is a conversation that we could have around the dinner table. And I can imagine having all of the relatives and friends around the dinner table talking about what is your perception of God. And I guarantee you will come up or hear a rabbit of different ideas and thoughts and perceptions of God. This is something that can be very controversial. And it happens to be something that I think we all need to really think about. What is our perception of God? Well, the definition of perception is it is an interpretation. It is our interpretation of our reality. It is our interpretation of our reality of life, our reality of experiences, our culture. It guides our perception of who God is and how we view God in our lives. It has a profound effect on our prayer life because it can actually have an influence on our perception whether our prayers will be answered or not. It is a definite interference, I should say, especially if our perception is not true of who God really is. Well, I want to hone in on and bring you into this a light or remembrance of who God is. I don't know what's happening in your life today. You may be dealing with some awful and difficult situations right now, or you may be on that up and up time of life where everything is just wonderful and blessed and can see only good right now. We all have those days. We all have ups and we all have downs. But I want to remind you that no matter what stage of life that you're having right now, that God is stable in his perception. He is steadfast on how he views us as his children, and he does not change. His perception does not change of how he perceives us as his children. Thank you, Jesus. When we look at David, we look at a man of triumph sometimes, right? And we look at him sometimes as a man that just really, boy, he just really messed up. But David was a man of God's own heart. We have read some of the cries that David cried out to God. I'm going to remind you of one over in Psalms 139, verse 1. David knows, he knew how God perceived him in spite of the disappointments of life that he had. He said, "Oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. You known when I sit down and you known when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar." David knows, or he knew, how God saw him in spite of who he really was within. In spite of all the wretchedness that he had within himself, he knew that God knew who he was. And he knew that God had still a perception of him being his child. We can also look at Job. Job said, "Though ye slay me, yet will I trust him." When he lost all of his children, wife looked back, turned into a pillow of salt. Job said, "Though ye slay me, yet will I trust him." And God came to him and spoke to him and reminded him of his majesty in his life. If we go over to Job 28, God asked Job, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the world?" Read more of that in your study. God goes into how he is and how amazing and majestic he is. And he reminded Job that he can trust him and count on him. So whatever your perception is of God, you can be sure that he is concerned about you, and that his time is not, again, our time. He is not conformed to time. Because over in Revelation, he says that he is Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So tonight, I want to encourage you, or those that are on their high right now, I want to remind you that when things get low, that God has not changed. That whatever our perception is of him, that we can be sure that he will never change. His perception of us will never change as his children. What is your perception of God? Is it truth or is it error? Perceptions. Wow. Wasn't that amazing? I hope that helped you remember who God is. So when our perception of Him becomes very small and minute, I'm talking to me, we must remember that God, He is just too big for our minds to truly conceive who He is. So we can always trust Him as being our Father and our God, and that our perceptions should never change as who God is. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. And of course, you always know that you can have hope today.